Hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. This is season 17, episode, 37 or 8 by the time I publish it. I'm driving next to Yonatan Sompolinsky in Romania, of all places. We met here and we had lunch together. We hung out for a little bit. We haven't discussed anything related to Bitcoin or Kaspa because we saved it for the moment when we actually start recording. And I'm going to be driving you, sir, to the airport. I guess you're leaving already. How was your stay here?
So far, beautiful land, lots of potential. Lots of unrealized potential, I would say. Going back to our conversations.
So what are you doing these days? I saw that since our last conversation, which took about 7 hours, I think, you went to the Oxford Union to give a speech about what you're working on these days. And also you have people still mining and using Kaspa. What's new?
What am I doing these days?
Yeah.
It's not defined yet, not yet well defined. There's multiple fronts. I would say the development of Kaspa is driving. Michael, Ori.
I'm driving too.
Thriving.
Oh, thriving. I'm not thriving, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, you can come to Kaspa and you will thrive. So there are multiple developments in Kaspa, but I'm more witnessing it from the sidelines or watching Michael and Ori and Hans push these things forward. The main things that are happening in Kaspa are while Bitcoin is debating OpCat, Kaspa implemented a very enhanced and well-thought hard fork that essentially does covenants in the right way.
What does that mean? First of all, what kind of covenants and what does it mean to be done in the right way?
I guess there are two aspects to be done in the right way. One is OpCat is doing covenants through OpCat as an afterthought. It's not the...
OpCat is concatenation. You put together strings of data to get a different result.
Correct. And if you want to implement logic that can inspect the transaction, all transaction fields, then there are more direct ways to do so. Of course, this enables zero-knowledge verification, zero-knowledge logic, rollups, based apps. And so one aspect is simply designing just an OpCat and an opcode from the outset to function as covenant oriented. That's the easy part, or the more basic and primary part. The more nuanced part is to add to block headers and in consensus a richer sequencing commitment, which means that you can commit to you get a commitment to the entire sequence of transactions in the ledger.
Yeah.
And the reason this is important is because if you want to implement based apps, which means based meaning the app controls nothing about the sequencing. Sequencing is fully done by L1.
Okay.
So you need this sequencing commitment. So let me just dive into this nuance because this is something that's sometimes left out of the conversation. You can use covenants to do zero-knowledge logic and verification through OpCat, even without this enhanced opcode that I mentioned. But what you can't do is the prover in those cases will be an entity that views the entire sequence of transactions,
okay,
and can prove that it ran a subset of them.
Interesting.
A subset of them and arrived at a correct output. In order to further commit the sequencer to having run all transactions, of course in order, but all transactions and not skip any, you have to have a consensus. The L1 needs to provide you, or the opcode, a commitment that you can work with, that ZK can work with. So in that sense, you can do you can do almost based apps in Bitcoin with Opcat, but as far as I know, you can't do censorship-resistant based rollups or based apps without this additional feature.
I think in Bitcoin they're called sovereign rollups, and they have some trade-offs compared to, they're sort of like optimistic rollups on Ethereum, but they're not like the complete kind of rollups that you can have when you enable all of the opcodes.
These optimistic rollups are already without Opcat?
I think so. I think they're using BitVM.
Yeah, so with BitVM and without Opcat, you can do these optimistic constructions.
But it's also interesting because there's a jargon concerning it. There's optimistic rollups and there's optimistically verified rollups. And there's a difference between them. Don't ask me to explain it very clearly for you. It's just that we tend to have a lot of terms in the space.
Optimistic versus optimistically verifiable?
Verified, yes.
Let's go verify.
I think Liam Egan, he explained them to me, but right now I'm driving. I can't think very hard. But I do want to ask you, because rollups and this ZK technology, initially ZK was made for privacy, to be able to prove that something exists without revealing what it is. Just like a basic logic of yes, it's true or no, it's not true, but without revealing any more information. And in Ethereum, they started using this rollup technology, and also it bled into Bitcoin because they wanted it to scale better. Ethereum ran into a scaling issue, and they tried for many years to figure out ways to make it work. It seems like rollups is their way to the future. And I do want to ask you, because Kaspa by design is very different. It mines 10 blocks per second. It has this pruning feature, which makes sure that it's lightweight for validators. Like, why does Kaspa need to verify ZK proofs, and why you use this data compressing techniques when you're already optimized for scaling, or is it for privacy?
Many questions. First, just for the record, we are recorded, right?
Yes.
Okay. So for the record, I'm very bearish on rollups.
Yeah.
I'm using the term rollup because listeners are familiar with it, and definitely Bitcoiners, when they think those Bitcoiners who still think about apps on Bitcoin are thinking about it in terms of rollups. This is the only reason I'm uttering the word rollup. Otherwise, I would highly recommend against implementing it or spending our time together discussing it. But to the point, and to the historical point, first of all, as far as I remember, ZKs were mainly introduced in Ethereum as a scaling solution, not as a privacy solution.
Yeah.
Of course, you had projects that used ZK as the acronym hence for zero knowledge, but the term is misleading, and almost all of the heavy load of the heavy lifting in ZKPs is in the validity rules, not in the privacy or zero knowledge aspect. And indeed, there's limitations, conceptual limitations to what you can do with privacy and a smart contract if you want the states to remain public. So even if you're a big believer in privacy, you still need to make compromises if you want to in the context of smart contracts and shared state, because you don't want the state to be held by only few parties. You want it to be computed, not only verified. So the whole concept of privacy and smart contracts is in advance limiting you to a very specific or to a restricted subset of applications and use cases. This is why ZKPs were mainly used or spoken of in terms of scalability. And as far as I see, the current map in Ethereum is that zero knowledge.
Oh, okay. It was the scooter that made the DXO restart. Okay. I think this one. I broke the camera.
I think this will be good for this, right? There's a cable here that's challenging us. Okay.
No, the cables or the microphones.
You see, that's what happens when you talk about rollups. You kind of camera flips. As far as I see, Ethereum is shifting away from layer 2s in general. Like it's assumed, understood now to be an inferior way to run your ecosystem. Again, these insights and intuitions are now, we're discussing something in a great lag relative to Ethereum community. These things were understood, I think, already a year ago. The layer 2 roadmap was described, basically was overridden, and now Ethereum is going towards a layer 1 centric construction. Does that work better? I think we'll do like this. Okay, how are we now?
I guess we're fine until the next time I have to turn to the left.
Okay. I will just hold it, I guess. Okay, so the bottom line is rollups should not be the main focus of discussion, in my opinion. It should be about what zero knowledge is used for, and zero knowledge is not used. It can be used for privacy for a limited set of use cases. It's mainly used for scaling and for separating layers. This is the main point. The main point is you take a verification focus language, L1, a language sitting on an L1 like Bitcoin or Kaspa, and you bridge through zero knowledge opcode, you bridge an expressive world of computation to that L1, whilst ensuring that the L1 is thin and not thin in terms of logic, and does not at all deal with this complex computation. This is the gist of using ZKPs today. You can ask why not run all computation on L1. It's both a matter of scalability and also just of a matter of separation of roles. An L1 that wants to secure money shouldn't deal with computation. It's too large of a surface, of an attack surface or failure surface. This has been understood in Bitcoin, and Kaspa by and large follows the Bitcoin design principles. So even though Kaspa is scalable, we keep it UTXO oriented, we keep it limited expressiveness, and everything is done similar to Bitcoin in terms of the language, but you need to have the advanced opcodes in order to ensure that you can do zero knowledge in a logical way. Makes sense.
Right, so can you tell me about some use cases that you have unlocked with the covenants? What users in Kaspa can do today that they could not in the past?
Well, these are two different questions. The use cases is basically any computation I would add a reservation in a moment, but any computation that you want to have that any app, that would be the better description. An application that you want to run in a way that interacts with a blockchain, with a payment, can be done with covenants. Let me give an example. You have an AI agent. We discussed before that I have to say the word AI so that the algorithm finds your podcast better.
Oh no.
Oh, so you have some ephemeral logic that the agent wants to create, and at the same time with the same action, create the logic, define it, condition, and lock the money with, so that we can do a general version, a richer version of atomic swaps. So yeah, we need to find a long-term solution for this. Otherwise, need to find a use case. Okay. So you're the boss. What do you suggest we do with this? You want me to just keep like this, or I'll hold the camera like this?
I don't know. I'm focused on driving right now. The road is not friendly.
Okay. Do you want to switch, and you'll focus on the camera and I'll focus on driving?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I think the audio is more important than the video. So if there are some small hiccups, I can fix them on post. Don't worry.
Okay. I think the video gives context why the audio is yeah.
But also look, the road is like this. Yeah. It's beautiful, spectacular, but it's not great for recording.
Yeah.
I wish I got one of these.
Do you have a magnet?
Yeah, big one. I do have a mag set.
Can we do this like this?
Yeah, but I don't think we're in the shot.
Yeah, that's not.
I mean, it works if it's stable. The obsession with stability in the space. If it's stable, works. No more hiccups.
Okay. Okay, so I was saying, so you're asking about now that everything's stable, let's get to the real deals. So you're asking about what covenants unlock, and specifically what do I imagine people will use it for? In general, if you do covenants in the right way, without leaving room for censorship, then you can do apps. What you won't be able to do is the general DeFi Lego box where things compose freely.
Mm-hmm.
That's not available yet. That's not part of the vision of covenants. It's more related to a separate or an upper layer or higher upgrade. That's called the vPros. We shouldn't, I think, talk about it now, but I'm happy to if you want. But first, I'll describe covenants. So with covenants, you can, one nice representative flow that through which you can understand what covenant is or how it will be used is in traditional computation platforms like Ethereum and Solana. You need to create a contract, and then in a separate action, you interact with a contract. So a contract is like is a heavy operation, or an operation that is optimized for a lasting usage. Mm-hmm. With covenants, covenants are optimal for ephemeral logic. So you have a one-time interaction between another person or another agent, and you want to define logic. You want to define logic that will lock that will govern your interactions. Think about atomic swap, but in a more general, vault. So you can, we will swap only if, you pass the coins to this, either whitelist or at least through some other covenant, and only within the next hour. And additionally, I require a certain, 3 out of 5 for verification, signature, whatever logic you want that is not, that you can think of as useful for your business orchestration or for your logic or for your, for the reason you are using the blockchain.
Yeah.
You can express this in a one-time logic, and atomically within the same transaction, you deploy the logic and lock the transfer or lock the coins. This seems like an incremental. It seems like I only saved you one round of interaction, but I argue this is both very representative of what covenants can, what flows are typically used with covenants, and I argue this for the agentic economy, for the lack of a more interesting term. For these flows, it's very natural. You just interact one time. They say this is what needs to happen. There's no contract deployment. The deployment looks one and the same like a regular transfer. Just the SIGPUB key is different. It blocks a logic. I hope that's clear. If not, push back on that.
Is there an article that people can read to understand better?
Technical articles, yes. For the use cases, it's a good question. I think there's I would say an expectation that the most technical people will provide the best use cases, whereas I see it a bit differently. There's I think people need to understand what it can do, and you should rely on other people's good ideas. My own there are two hats I would say I'm wearing here. There's the use cases that I would push for, and there's the good use cases. I'm not sure they are the same.
How? So you're saying that your use cases are not the best ones, or not the good ones?
I'm saying that I would say they're not necessarily the same level that something that will be used by everyone. You see, okay, so Vitalik came out with a white paper, okay, wrote a few use cases. Some hit, some didn't hit. Right. Today, I can list all the use cases that people describe about, the use cases with Bitcoin's covenants. Okay, why am I not doing that? Why am I not going over the list of use cases that people are describing with Bitcoin? Because crypto in general has now a crisis about what is crypto useful at all for. So when you ask me about use cases for Kaspa's covenants, I'm stuttering and hesitant, and the reason is because we should go out of the Kaspa context or out of the covenants context, zoom out for a moment and ask, okay, what use cases is crypto useful for and is used for? Okay, within it, we can draw a circle and say, here, Kaspa is optimized for that. That's the right flow for me to discuss. But if you ask in general, what's the use cases for this feature? I'm like, okay, what use cases do you agree crypto is useful for? So I would push back the question to you, and only then I will engage with in a useful conversation.
Also want to ask you, because last year when we did our interview, I think it was in June or something, I remember it was summer, and you showed me your pet turtle named Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you were working on a new protocol that's called DAGKnight.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something very interesting about it, that it's the only one that can survive a nuclear winter, if I'm not mistaken, or something along these lines.
Yeah.
How's the progress on it? I think it was gonna generate 100 blocks per second and also become more censorship resistant.
It's not more censorship resistant, faster censorship resistant, I would say. So the progress is doing well. There's a secretive meeting somewhere in Europe of a few DAGKnight magicians taking place these days to accelerate the progress on this. This is also the context why I'm in the area of your country.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
You're hunting for magicians.
Exactly. So the let me straighten the understanding about DAGKnight. DAGKnight in and of itself is not faster per se. It has more blocks per second. It's not faster per se. You can in principle you can decide you're running 100 blocks per second even today with Phantom GHOSTDAG, and vice versa. You can decide you're implementing DAGKnight and running still 10 blocks per second. The reason DAGKnight is unique is because it is the only protocol which is resilient to 51% to 49% Byzantine attacks, and does not have a latency parameter. The implication of this is that if you increase the block rate, you can still confirm transactions at the actual network latency, and you don't need to protect against the worst case catastrophic latency that can happen anytime in the future of the network. So in clear terms, if you need to set up in your protocol a latency parameter, here's your
11 kilometers straight ahead.
Okay, so if you need to set up in your protocol a latency parameter hard-coded, then you have to ensure that this parameter represents an upper bound on the latency, whatever the circumstance of the network are. So you need to protect against worst case latency. But if you have a parameter that is responsive to the actual network parameters, then you are more comfortable accelerating the block rate, even if it sometimes will create a lag.
Okay.
But most of the time, you'll just keep accepting transactions at the same pace. So to give you the example, if today we increase the block rate from 10 blocks per second to 100 blocks per second, then you will need to hard code in the hard fork a change of the parameter k in the network, in the consensus, which would imply that confirmation of transactions will take tens of seconds, at least about 8x long.
Check out Cake Wallet, which is the place where you find lots of features which are privacy friendly for your Bitcoin. For example, you have pay joins, silent payments. You can even get on the Lightning Network if you're into that. But also there's support for Zcash and Monero, and you can buy gift cards, you can do swaps, you can buy debit cards that work at all Visa terminals if you're into that. It's like a super app. You can also buy AI credits. It's quite interesting. Check out Cake Wallet. It's free to download. and it's non-custodial as a wallet. And there's also LayerTwo Labs. They are launching a hard fork of Bitcoin, which is going to be called eCash. You can find more information at ecash.com. They will have a sidechain for lots of popular altcoins like Zcash. It's going to be called Zside. Namecoin, it's going to be called BitNames. They're going to have a quantum resistant sidechain. They're going to have, what else? An asset sidechain, pretty much everything that is popular in crypto, but around the same base layer. And maybe there's going to be a Kaspa sidechain too, who knows, can be part of the plan. You can find out more information at ecash.com. And if you hold any Bitcoin, you're going to be able to claim the same amount in eCash 1-to-1. You can use these coins to dump them on the market to buy more Bitcoin. You can try the new technology, which was designed for Bitcoin but didn't make it because of politics or whatever. And now we finally get to see if this works as promised. Check it out, ecash.com. If you want to mine eCash next month, no, it's actually this month, we're in August. It's going to be launching around the 21st of August. And if you want to mine it, or you want to 51% attack it, or you just want to experiment with hash rate, you can go to Braiins, which has this service. So Braiins is the oldest Bitcoin, oh, there's someone taking a picture of us, is the oldest Bitcoin mining pool. It used to be called Slashpool. And right now they have a hash rate rental service that's called HashPower. The URL is hashpower.braiins with a i.com. And you can rent hash rate for pretty much anything that you find interesting or useful for yourself. Sometimes it's even cheaper than buying your own hardware, just to get the hash rate from someone who's doing a good job in terms of electricity cost and efficiency. So check it out. Orange Rock is the place where you can trade without limits and without KYC. It's very cool. It's like a nicer interface for Hyperliquid, except that you have everything in one app that right now is available on iOS. It's coming on Android and desktop soon. And I really like it. Check it out. You can even gamble, which means you can use leverage, but I don't recommend that. It's a feature. If you think you're smart and you can time the market, you can try it. I know that BitMEX is shutting down, so maybe you're missing it, maybe not. Who cares? Check out Orange Rock and do your due diligence. Don't do anything stupid. And I think I mentioned all of them. I said Cake Wallet, SideShift. Did I say SideShift? The place where you swap your stable coins for? No, I didn't. I said it in the previous
run. Yeah.
Previous run. SideShift is the place where you swap your stable coins for something that cannot be confiscated. So if someone wants to pay you in USDT or USDC, you just put your Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, whatever it is that you want address into SideShift, and you send the stablecoin address to the person who wants to pay you. What you're going to get once the payment takes place is the asset that you want directly into your wallet. And you don't have to deal with gas tokens. There's good liquidity, low fees. Check it out, SideShift.ai. Thank you for sitting for my ads. Now let's talk about this Zk obsession, because it seems like Zcash has made a comeback.
Well, yeah, before Zcash, I'll give you the rundown about our previous, about DAGKnight and everything.
DAGKnight.
Yeah, and in general, how I would, if that's okay, the mental map that I think you should have.
Yeah,
you think about
I want that.
So now that the video is fixed, my brain is slightly more sharp, but not very much. We had
level my expectations.
Yeah, we had a good hike today and a good lunch. So okay, and I don't have also Bitcoin near me. The turtle, so I can't really focus. That's
much. Your lucky charm.
Yeah. Okay, so the mental model you should have is as follows. You like many crypto ecosystems. For whatever reason you go to that ecosystem. What would you find unique in Kaspa? In what context will you find Kaspa unique and helpful for you? So the day-to-day answer to that, the normal usage of Kaspa would be in any scenario where you want either a very lean settlement layer that is very fast but lean,
Right.
that you can use, that you can deploy fast logic to, even ephemeral, meaning not lasting smart contract, just a one-time logic. And you want just a ping pong. You want to send a logic to lock something, and you want to get confirmed. You want to get it confirmed within less than a few hundreds of milliseconds. You want just to work very fast with logic. Now there are other chains that provide that once you deploy the logic, you can interact with it within half a second. But using it in the covenant manner, which allows you to do thin logic.
That was an Aston Martin.
That was the model the 70s models.
No, it was newer, but it's not nice.
That's why it didn't catch my eyes. So that's one area where I would immediately tell you with confidence, this Kaspa is the only place where you'll find what you need. I mentioned AI agents, despite the cringe, to mention this.
I did see that there is a trend where people say they're not building for humans anymore; they're building for agents to make transactions.
Well, even if you build for a human, the human is interacting with whatever they're interacting through their agent. Even if the operator is online, they're still interacting with an agent, through an agent. So it's kind of, when someone is building for the agentic economy, the question is whether they are building for autonomous agents, for semi-autonomous agents, or for really a human that's just behind the agent and telling it what to do.
Anyway, sorry for the distraction. We're on another topic.
So one area is just when I want to lock and unlock conditional on ephemeral logic, very fast confirmation, very lean operation. I don't need to deploy a smart contract, and I want most of my usage to be isolated and governed by the UTXO, which is mainly to say I have my own keys, my coins. I don't need to interact with other aspects. That's one aspect. Another more, I would say more specific use case or set of use cases is whenever you want to sample the majority of the network, the honest majority of the network in real time. So you can think of crypto ecosystems, the crypto ecosystem, as splitting to two subsystems. You could think of the term real-time decentralization. So most of crypto is either real-time or decentralization.
Okay.
No one married these two categories.
So you're saying that whatever is decentralized takes time to confirm, yeah, and whatever is instant and has quick finality is mostly centralized.
Yes.
Okay. I think I can agree with that.
Right. It's kind of how we accept the slowness for the proof of work heavy chains, and we understand that Solana or Ethereum 2.0 are fast, and I wouldn't say Ethereum 2.0 is fast, but Solana is fast and Hyperliquid is fast, but they're more centralized. And to be clear, when I say centralized, we can go into the nuance. I'm not necessarily saying that the Sybil-resistant layer, the miners, so to speak, the stakers of Solana are centralized. You can even provide a softer characterization and say they are in the short term centralized. There's a single leader to the production of Solana blocks. So in that sense, they are fast, but in those within the time span of the interaction, you are at the hands of one or maybe two validators of Solana.
Yeah. I mean, even in Ethereum, it used to be Infura or Geth or one of these large players that were running archival nodes and had every contract stored. They were relying on these. So it was in many ways, it was maybe distributed but not decentralized.
Correct. Though you can also think about it just in terms of the L1 consensus dynamics. If you want to ensure that your transaction was governed by a multitude of miners, for instance, to pick a use case that is close to your heart, censorship resistance.
Yeah.
You need to wait until your transaction was seen by multiple miners. Right? So in Bitcoin, if your transaction is censored by OFAC and 80% of the network is censoring it, it will take you an hour or so to be mined by an honest, uncensoring miner.
That's correct.
And in other systems, okay, it's not Bitcoin, the 10 minutes. So even in other systems, it takes tens of seconds or 10 seconds to mine one block. So it takes you like a minute or so to be decensored, so to speak. So in any scenario where this is too long, where you want real time, but sampling, you need in real time to sample the honest majority of the network, so that you will get a good treatment. And I'll give another example of a use case. Then you will necessarily use Kaspa is the only chain you can use. Why? Because proof of work inherently is the only method by which you bundle the writing of the content of the block and being selected within the block. It's selected to be a miner. Okay. In proof of stake, this is almost always, I'll give an asterisk soon, it's almost always separated.
Okay.
So you are selected as a validator or as a proposer or a builder, a proposer, yeah. You're selected as a proposer separately from your choice of transactions, right? So this separation, I'm not talking about the PBS separation, which is not a real separation. I'm talking about the separation between I have been selected as a proposer and this is a set of transactions I'm mining or I'm proposing. These two roles are separated in proof of stake. In proof of work, they come together because you need to commit to the block you're mining. And then if you want to sample for your use case, you want to get a good sample of the network, but you want your use case your service to be in real time, then Kaspa is the only chain where you can do so. So for example, if you want I'll give an example from the previous world and then from the new world. But from the previous world, I feel like crypto was, this is like a long parenthesis, but I feel like there's the bear market is really it's not bearish only in terms of the market cap. It's also bearish in terms of the actual usage.
Yes.
The way
You
crypto
can see how users disappear once the price doesn't go up anymore.
Yeah, and I think this wasn't the case in the past. Or at least I don't remember that to be the case. So that's why when when we're talking about use case, I'm like, okay, but this is a different type of crisis, because now it's unclear what use cases stick in crypto, and whether we are comfortable with these being our, with those remaining use cases being hailed as the peak of the revolution, so to speak. So back to the previous flow. In the previous world, one example for that would be any case you want a bridge,
Yes, I see the bridge. I wish it was recorded, but
it's no, I can set it.
oh yeah, you have to stop it.
Okay. So if you want a bridge or you want an Oracle attestation, you want anything that bridges from the outer world into the settlement layer, into the settlement logic, you want any information from the outside. Here, the stark contrast between real-time and decentralization, you can immediately feel it, right? Because you can either decide to wait for multiple votes and multiple attestations from different oracles or different entities until you know for sure that this event happened or that event happened.
Okay.
And but there's a clear choice. You either wait longer in order to sample a larger portion of the network.
Yeah.
What's this festival?
I don't know. I got distracted. There's Labubu dolls and Lilo and Stitch inflatables, and actually they're humans and use mascot suits. Anyway, Romania. It's colorful.
I said that your country has a lot of potential. I mean, the way here was absolutely beautiful. This is where you do ski?
Yes, this is a skiing place. Quite famous. Like right now, I think you're in one of the most popular tourist places in the country. That's why you think it's nice. We think it's nice too.
What's the name of this town?
Bucharest. Bucharest. 3 logs.
3 logs. Nice. This actually looks like a very nice ski resort. So I'll accept your invitation that you adjust.
This way, you actually go to the, what do you call this, tele cabin? The place where you have like an elevator for...
Yeah. Do you ski?
I think I did it once when I was 12 or something. I'm very afraid of bruises and breaking my arm or whatever. I did that 2 or 3 times in my life and I don't want that anymore. Yeah, I need to lose a bit of weight before I try extreme sports. Or at least try skateboarding for a while. Just get used to sliding. But yeah, what was your point?
My point was that as a proof of work punk, you do come, it aligns with you being anxiety oriented. You're always optimizing for the worst case.
No, that's a good approach generally.
Well, that's the nice thing about Bitcoin the pet, because like a turtle always carries all the defense all the time in every block.
I feel like we're getting much more lore right now about your pet turtle.
No, it's about your pet coin. It's my pet turtle is Ninja Turtle. Like it can do like from the 90s. We spoke about yesterday.
Leonardo, Raphael, Mike.
Yeah, so we have like best of both worlds. Like we have all of our protection measures on our back, but it doesn't prevent us from doing like 10 or 100 blocks per second. That makes sense.
Okay.
So in the previous world, anytime you want a bridge or attestation from the outer world, you would need to decide whether you want it in real time, and then you have to lean on one leader, on one miner or proposer, or you can wait for multiple rounds, and in every network it implies a different waiting gap in order to ensure that you got an honest and accurate vote or attestation of what happened outside the blockchain. Hence the importance of mining lots of blocks per second. Proof of work enables you, fast proof of work enables you to sample lots of miners at the same network round. So consider like you have, consider 100 blocks per second, and you have some bridge or some Oracle attestation that is material for triggering a certain event on your blockchain.
Yeah.
Then, thanks to the large population that you mine with 100 blocks per second within one one round, you alleviate the trade-off between real-time and decentralization. This is the holy grail of Kaspa to me. The fact that you were able to implement real-time and decentralization outside a trade-off. Does that make sense?
It's like having your cake and eating it too.
Yeah, and
you don't have to choose anymore.
You don't have to choose. I'm not saying there are not other trade-offs with the system. You mentioned pruning and you mentioned other stuff, but in the specific context of
Hi, police.
In the specific context of real-time and decentralization, Kaspa gives you a unique escape from this trade-off. I mentioned this is in the previous world. In the now world, I would again succumb to the fact that everything will be used by AIs or by, again, I'm not talking about necessarily fully autonomous AIs. I'm talking about could be semi-autonomous AIs or AIs with people behind them. I think this is an era where you can easily imagine people optimizing for hit and run usages of a blockchain rather than force the agent into a certain smart contract or a certain logic flow, because the agents are very eccentric and creative and they will just flow to whatever gives them this hit and run experience. And this is what I mentioned in the beginning with covenants that allow you to do this ephemeral logic. Now, all this talk about real-time decentralization is not incidentally, it's related to what you mentioned about World War resistant. Although this is completely supposedly on the opposite kind of consideration, because now we're talking about what protection properties the chain has rather than what usage properties it optimizes for. So in our regular conversation about crypto, we would expect this speed to be antithetical to hardcore protection from catastrophes. Do you agree with this distinction, or you're too focused on the fork?
Which fork?
In the road.
Oh, fork in the road.
Your thoughts again about eCash? I caught you again ruminating about eCash.
No, not this time, but okay. I do think about that a lot because this could have been the way to scale Bitcoin and get it to do everything and pay the miners for it. Mm-hmm. Right now, we don't know what's going to be the next big use case for Bitcoin, and people just speculate that, well, we can use it for this and we can use it for that, but none of these L2s pay the miners that we have. And we seem to have trends, and this is a general problem, not just in Bitcoin. It happened in Ethereum, happened on every chain. You have trends when people do something for a while and then they get bored of it and maybe they want something new, maybe that they find something new somewhere else, like in the AI world. And then we're stuck with this situation where Satoshi's biggest bet was that there's going to be enough transaction fees to compensate for the diminishing mining rewards. That's in the white paper in the incentives subchapter. And I just don't see at this point how that can happen, how we can get there. It's not obvious and it takes a lot of work. And unfortunately, Bitcoiners do like to assume that since there's a limited supply, the demand is going to go up by itself and people will buy Bitcoin just because it's scarce. And that's stupid. There's a lot of scarce stuff in the world. That's not why people buy something. They buy something when it's useful and when it makes sense for them. And what is Bitcoin used for nowadays? Maybe some payments, but not so much, not at scale. It's just some hardcore people who are still using it. And otherwise, most of it is speculation. And the question is speculation on what? Because my understanding was that the speculation was about whether or not this can be the future of money. And when you make it less useful as money, and you just want to have a pet rock that's on the blockchain, the question is, what is the end goal? It can't be a store of value forever. By the way, this is like the royal train station. This is where the king used to come.
Oh, this is where you wanted the retreat to be.
Yes, Sinai. It comes from Mount Sinai. A bunch of monks retired here after the fall of Constantinople, and they built this. It's very beautiful.
Mount Sinai in Israel or here?
What's the question?
Mount Sinai in Israel or here?
Mount Sinai, I don't know. In Israel, I guess. That's the one. There's only one. The one from the Bible.
Yeah. Between Israel and Egypt.
And they came here and they called this place Sinai. So,
yeah.
Yeah, anyway. I gotta ask you about what's your latest... I don't know. Do you think about Bitcoin at all? Do you follow the conversations, for example, with people wanting to filter some transactions? Or do you follow the eCash conversation where there's going to be a hard fork for trying this sidechain tech?
Bitcoin is dead boring to me at this stage. I would see Zcash as...
I agree with that. It's my favorite version of Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's the... I would say it's if something becomes like protection heavy and not usage heavy, I would bet on Zcash, not Bitcoin. At the current stage, Bitcoin is both boring as a technology, and the discussions surrounding that Bitcoin devs engage in are very outdated, very lagging behind the burning questions. So the eCash thing could have been a good idea a few years ago. It feels a bit like too little too late, in the sense, I'm not saying that it's not the right path for Bitcoin, but since they're not, eCash is not branding itself as a Bitcoin, and nothing interesting would come out of Bitcoin as I feel. And I have so if I'm following what's happening in other chains, I'm following Zcash. Of course, I'm following anything interesting that I encounter, but mainly other than Kaspa, Zcash, following Solana.
I want to say that 1 or 2 weeks ago, I lost count of the days. I've had this finance guy who created the Swan Bitcoin exchange. His name is Corey Clipston. And he was on my show and he was saying, look, even the VCs who were scamming in the past were able to revive Zcash. And I was thinking, how do I explain to this guy how big of a deal it is that you can have, first of all, ZK snarks in a shielded pool that can have a verifiable supply. And this is a major breakthrough that they were able to do with Ironwood. And secondly, the Tachyon project, which is about synchronization in a way that sort of does client-side validation in order to be able to scale this technology, which previously was considered to be unscalable. They're looking at ZK snarks saying, well, it's a nice experiment, but it doesn't scale. And now they have a way to go forward to scale to millions of users. Yeah, police.
Another... I think they will arrest you for driving too slow.
They take pictures.
Your blocks are like driving me nuts.
My what?
Your block rate.
My block rate? Am I slow?
You're protective, I would say.
I'm talking and driving, so I'm trying to not make mistakes with either of them. So yeah, I'm driving conservatively, not very fast. But yeah, I don't want to get stopped by the police. It could be interesting. Maybe we can get more views if we actually get pulled over.
But yeah, I just prefer you drive. Like, you... In Kaspa, we can teach you how to do things faster.
No, in Bitcoin, we wait for 6 confirmations.
You definitely drive like that.
So, I was talking about Zcash.
Yeah, so you snuggled in there an interesting feature or trait about the verified supply. You were referring to the formal verification of the new pool.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is like a tectonic movement in crypto for me that has went under the radar, and I felt like I was almost the only one who noticed it, and I didn't understand why it wasn't spoken. It was just me, or like it. The fact that the biggest cryptographers and the most hardcore cryptography chain has now shrunk the role of cryptography from verifying the entire state transition to verifying the supply, to me is a very, very big deal. How come this this didn't make it to the headlines?
Well, Shanbo is a genius, and I think he's very much ahead of his time with lots of his ideas. And it takes time. Like, I think even Halo 2, which he used for removing the trusted setup in Zcash, that sort of flew under the radar. But once people made sense of it in a couple of years, it was everywhere. Everyone wanted to have the Orchard pool.
Sure, but you understand that there was a bug in the state transition, right?
Yes.
And this bug was not fixed, cannot be fixed.
Well, in Orchard.
In Orchard, right? Or getting in Zcash a historical verification of the state transitions is unfixable, right? You can't have it, right?
Yeah.
Now, I would expect this topic to become much more of a debate. How now the biggest and most active cryptographers are promoting the role of proofs and automated and formal verification on a strict subset of what used to be, zero-knowledge proofs or validity proofs were used to be hailed for. Right now, no one is talking about. No one is talking about verifying the entire state, because we can no longer verify the state of Zcash, right? The historical state.
Yes.
So now the verification is narrowed to a strict to a strict use case of the supply, not even to other aspects, just of the supply. And to me, this is a very big shift. And a few days after this, I spoke with Sajuka about it, and he said, yes, his approach was always pragmatic, right? In the sense of using proof for whatever we can have them for, I guess, and for now, if we can have it only for the supply, so be it. The reason I'm mentioning this is because in Kaspa, we have we don't have archival nodes. We are pruning everything, right?
Yes.
And this means that Kaspa does not verify, the ordinary flow of Kaspa consensus does not verify at all historical correctness, and does not provide you proofs, and does not attempt to provide you proofs of historical correctness. And at the time, people felt that this is this is a bug, and the fact that we didn't save archival historical data from the initial months of Kaspa launch is a big stain on the correctness. And I met a Zcash dev, a core dev, which kind of pushed this criticism on Kaspa, and I asked him what would you say about the lack of historical correctness in Zcash, and this was before the bug. This was regarding the sapling bug.
Yeah,
and he kind of gave it an honest thought, and reconsidered his stance. So from that perspective, I think the rise of Zcash is, first of all, highly justified. It is much more refreshing than what is happening with what happening or not happening in Bitcoin, and for Kaspa ecosystem, it is big news, because Bitcoin's launch was pristine. It has no flaws, and everything is auditable, and there are no historical bugs, and there's also no usage. But beside that, the growth of the Zcash, the recent growth of Zcash, is a very good sign, and paving the way for Kaspa, in the sense that it gives room for proof of work coins or proof of work projects that provide, in some aspects, better properties than Bitcoin. Of course, not without a trade-off, but there are concrete formal aspects in which you can show this is provides a Pareto improvement over Bitcoin. And I feel that up until Zcash's rise, there was a very restrictive glass ceiling on Kaspa's growth potential and adoption potential in the hardcore community, if it makes sense.
Yeah, you mentioned the name Zuko, and I know that you share a very interesting story with him. At some point he was broke and he was sleeping in your car, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know if it was broken. I wouldn't say it was broken. And even if
I said he was broke and he was sleeping in your car. I don't know about now, and maybe we just broke.
Oh, broke.
Like no money.
I wouldn't.
But was it your car that you borrowed for sleeping?
I wouldn't know if Zuko was broke, but I wouldn't rule out that even if he wasn't, he still is a very low key. So I don't know if he was broke, but yeah, he came to Israel. I think if it was in one of the, and I can't recall why he came to Israel. It was some gathering or conference, but it wasn't scaling Bitcoin. It was years before. And yeah, so I have I know Zuko for some time. He was he actually gave me a very nice my best memory from Zuko is like one day before the sapling Zcash was announced, the sapling bug was announced. I met him in Stanford, and we spoke about Kaspa and the different trade-offs that that I'm contemplating. This was before the launch, and he was very chill and told me just launch and see what reality gives you. Could be considered today. I'm not presenting the conversation in the right light. It meant a lot to me, to his push. And then one day after, they announced 1 year later. It took like almost a year to patch it.
Yes, I know, and they had to keep it secret because at the time, they were afraid someone was gonna exploit it.
So it was a very nice gesture, I would say, to speak like in a very chill manner at someone, to contemplate with me the hardships of my project when he's less than 24 hours before, I would say, the biggest upset of Zcash up until recently. I think there's some downplaying of the of the trust issues with this bug. It's not that I do think it was exploited. It's more like, for people from the outside, to me it seems the logical thing I would do if I would consider the bug, if I were to discover the bug, I would. Again, I'm not justifying it. I just know what I would do. I would just print in the side thread an infinite amount, just to be sure, and then maybe someone lost their coins. Right? You can realistically say that if someone didn't migrate to Ironwood within, I don't know, a year or 2 or 3, wouldn't you say they probably lost their coins?
I don't know, maybe that they're waiting for it to be more tested, and they're gonna, you're somewhat right about holding this in orchard, which makes no sense. You gotta get out of orchard.
If someone told you that they lost it, if someone told you in confidence they lost this and this amount of coins, would you then feel that you can use their amount with your butt?
I don't know. Maybe they're lying, and then you're gonna end up hurting the system in a way that's reversible. I do agree that people lose coins all the time, and maybe that inflation, clear or hidden, can make up for that. I think Peter Todd is a champion of saying that 2% demurrage is not inflation, because it basically compensates for the coins that were lost, and he has a paper about that. I just want the system to be fair, and I want the coins to be mined fairly, not printed in a way that exploited a bug. I mean, it gets to a point where it's sort of voluntary central banking at this point, because you want to adjust the supply to make up for something that was unfortunate and might have happened. You're not sure, like, how do you even verify that the person has lost their coins? You have to trust them. And I do hope that the orchard bug was not exploited and no extra coins are gonna show up. So far, I think the migration was double digit. I'm not sure if it went up to 20% in the first week, which I think is a bit disappointing. I was expecting people to be more excited about this. I was one of the people who transferred his Zcash from Orchard to Ironwood on day 1. And I've actually tried the various services and wallets that do the transition. I think they're very cool in the way that they handled this. But yeah, I have high hopes for Zcash because it actually dares to be different, and also have high hopes for eCash because last year when we were doing our interview and around the time when I also interviewed Vitalik, nobody thought that Zcash was gonna make a comeback. They were saying, well, it's kind of dead. It's like a zombie coin. It started out this interesting technology, but now the same technology is used for Tornado Cash and Railgun and what else? There's also the fancier Maya protocol, which I think uses it. Aztec, I think too. So it seems like people were talking about Zcash like this proof of concept, which gave birth to lots of other protocols using the same technology. And then suddenly Zcash came back because people figured out how to make it scale. I think that was the big reveal. And then they also found a better way to do shielded pools. And the market reacted to this. Was there Silicon Valley involvement? Yes. But is there some actual hope that comes from the technological progress? Also, yes. In Bitcoin, we haven't had much hope in a long time with something that's actually going to scale and actually going to bring a bullish use case. Since the ETFs, it's been stagnating, and you get Michael Saylor saying in tweets very directly that he doesn't like covenants, he doesn't like increasing the block size, he doesn't like a lot of stuff that can potentially get more users to use Bitcoin, because his understanding of it is that it should stay this institutional grade asset. And this is not really what I signed up for. And I think even the most toxic maximalist guys have to face themselves in the mirror and ask, why are they even here? Do they still hope that the project is gonna get turned around and become cypherpunk again? I mean, I don't blame them for that. I used to be in that camp, but when you see so much information that gives you the contrary scenario, I'm not as bullish anymore. I'll let you talk because there is a motorcycle in front of me and I need to be extra careful with this guy.
I guess my question is, do you think if another coin had the same bug and patch, would it survive it?
You mean like Zcash?
Yeah, my hunch is, and maybe it's unavoidable, but nonetheless we need to speak about it. My hunch is that
I don't think so. I think any other coin would have been abandoned and forgotten for a while, but maybe that the precedent that there was such an incident before in Zcash helped it. Maybe the fact that this was discovered by one of their developers and not by some Kimi K-free user also helped.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it came from inside of the team twice, like the times when the inflation bugs were patched. And they cannot say with 100% certainty that there was no exploits, but also their code base is so ahead of the curve that there may be 5 people in the world who even understand what's going on there. And I think that's a problem, but it's a problem that's going to get fixed as there's going to be more education and more academics entering the space and learning how this works. It was the same with Ethereum not so long ago.
In what way?
A lot of people, I mean, I still have a hard time defining what Ethereum is. It's not a world computer, it's not whatever.
So I think as Ethereum, it has the same sense of
identity crisis.
Yeah, loss of excitement or something very tame about the future. I forgot the acronym, the new acronym that they provided. What was this? The supposed cypherpunk, the 5-letter acronym. I forgot the acronym, but it feels more like a virtue signaling list of traits, and I don't think it's I don't think it's repairable, because the Ethereum ecosystem has fragmented too much around layer 2s that now that we know, how to scale.
I'm stepping on it.
Okay. Now that we know how to build layer 1 ZK, I know became more feasible for consensus protocols. I don't know if they will use a DAG version or not, but at least there's knowledge how to do faster consensus. It still feels that it feels that the L1 centric part of Ethereum. And I'm saying L1 not because L1 is the most important, but because L1 is the only area where social consensus is still coherent and cohesive. It feels that in Ethereum, the L1 sub-community is much, much smaller than in other ecosystems. Ethereum is much more fragmented.
I agree with that.
And so now that some core devs or researchers are laying out the vision of let's go back to L1 principles, again, it feels too little too late. It doesn't matter if you'll code it with AI or not. The question is, the culture of Ethereum is not around a lean center compared to Solana, which is a very cohesive community. You can feel it from the outside. So in some sense, Solana is similarly more interesting than Ethereum. Is more interesting than Ethereum, is more active, similarly to Zcash being more active than Bitcoin and more interesting. And it's not an incident that they have, the intersection of leaders or influencers or however you want to call it, the people who push forward Solana and Zcash intersect. And so in Ethereum, I don't see it. I don't see the L1 back to L1 roadmap relevant anymore. It smells like virtue signaling. I don't know. That's how it smells. I hope it's more than that, but I'm not sure.
I want to ask you about something a bit more personal, because I've seen that you went to the Oxford Union to give a speech recently. And you also mentioned something about a new political movement that you want to start. Can you tell me more about that?
I wouldn't say I want to start a political movement. I mean, I don't mind being a president, but at least in my own house, I still don't have that authority.
Oh no.
So yeah, my political aspirations are for now to conquer my house, and then we can move forward.
That's how you scale.
Yeah. For 0 to 1, and then we can think forward. There's the winding down of the spirit of the revolution of crypto is not something too unique to this revolution. It happens time and again in revolutions. And in that context, I had a long, I would say multi-year thought, where should crypto go towards? And I came up with a thesis or maybe a manifesto, what the direction should be in my own humble opinion, from my own limited view. It's more about cypherpunks are hailing the individual.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way of describing it.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Hayek's true individualism versus false individualism. He has a nice article. It's not a book. It's more like an article, but it's excerpts of this is appear also in The Will to Serfdom and other books, where he lays out the two traditions of individualism, the French one and the English one. The TLDR is that individualism, as we are used to recognize it, and again, this is I'm speaking in broad strokes, of course, but the main voice of cypherpunks is emphasizing the atomic individual, which is not only the which is not only the beginning of society, the atomic particle society, but it's also isolated. So you see, I'll give you an example. The leaders of Bitcoin, at least when I remember them, when I encountered them first, were very isolated. They live in undisclosed areas.
Sure. Can you give a few examples just for the record?
I mean, Jameson Lopp comes to mind, right? As a very characteristic person, representative of the movement. I don't know. Andrew Polstra comes off similarly, and the Blockstream guys, which are great guys, but they're still talking in very individualistic terms, in the sense of centering the principles around the isolated individual. And this is where Friedrich Hayek draws the line between an individualism which centers around the individual as an isolated player in the scene,
yes,
versus which he calls false individualism.
Is that French or English?
That would come from the French tradition.
Yes.
And I don't know, maybe Thomas Paine or Rousseau, that kind of tradition. And versus the English tradition, which is more conservative, more gradual, didn't develop as a revolution, which still centers society around the individual, but the assumption or the context is not that the individual remains isolated and that all of our efforts are directed towards it's directed towards the individual that trusts no one and connects to no one and lives in the woods, which is or at least was the hardcore vibe of Bitcoiners at least in the first decade, before MicroStrategy became the face of Bitcoin. It's centered around, so the true individualism, the English tradition of individualism, is still centered around the individual as the atomic particle, but that individual, the context is that individual creates ties and connections with, you have 7.6 kilometers ahead.
Can you put it here just so I can see it better? So far it was just straight ahead for a long time. Well, no. There will be more turns. But yeah, I do understand that there's this certain type of individualism that is guaranteed, for example, by Magna Carta, which is a fundamental document in the English tradition, which describes that every man's home is his castle, for example.
Yes.
It's something that's also part of Timothy May's writings when he published the Cyphernomicon.
So it's not to say that everyone is, it's not to say that this necessarily describes the entire cypherpunk movement.
Of course not.
Yeah, I'm sure many...
There are a lot of left-wing anarchists. There are a lot of right-wing anarchists.
Right.
Schizophrenics, conspiracy theorists. We have quite a nice family in this space.
Yes, but still the leading voice, the temperament is around is around the atomic individual. So I think there's a difference between there isn't necessarily a one-to-one match between the ideologies and the temperament of people, right?
Keep talking.
So, I missed the. So I'm not necessarily saying that is this good? Okay. Yes. So I'm not necessarily claiming that this is a divide of values that I can identify clearly. As cypherpunks so far were only took only the isolated individualist part of the ideology, but the leaders were definitely shared that temperament and radiated these values, whether they believed them fully or just in their personal lives. That's what they incline. Okay. Now, this isolated, okay, and to be clear, also the English version still believes that the individual is the atomic particle or maybe the family, but the point is that the individual is directing the values and the information, and their choices shaped society around them.
Yes.
So it's not collectivist at all. It's not that the antithesis to the isolated individual is a collectivist. It is the connected, or the Hayek has this word, the enthusiastic individualist is the enthusiastic individualist. It's a passage in Hayek. I don't want to ruin it, but it's around the enthusiastic. You are cutting that guy. So the enthusiastic individualist creates ties and connections and communities, which you understand why this kind of sentiment or approach was pretty absent in crypto for the first decade.
Yeah.
And in that context, what I think crypto should evolve into is this more coordinated usage that is appealing to people who are not disconnected from society and living in the undisclosed areas in the forest, rather to ordinary people that create scenes, create communities, create connections, create trust. Now, the fact that people have trust connections does not mean that we should introduce trust into the backbone of society, of the settlement layer or the crypto layer. The hardcore layer should remain trustless and paranoid. But the kind of applications that we should ideate and design and enable, it should be, while they should be built on trustless rails, they should be optimized for individuals that are connecting. Under that umbrella term, I proposed the coordination market thesis, or the project Stag Hunt. I'm not sure if you're familiar or you read the short document that I published. But are you familiar with Stag Hunt in general? Stag Hunt? Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So you're familiar with Prisoner's Dilemma?
Prisoner's Dilemma. Yes, it's a classic lesson in economics and game theory.
Yes, and I hate that lesson. It's dark.
You don't like prisoners who turn on each other?
I don't know if I don't like that, but I don't like the fact that this is presented as the problem of humanity. And
of course not. It's just a simple example of understanding incentives and the cost of collaboration versus the cost of being adversarial.
I'm not sure it's not, because, for instance, in Scott Aronson's Moloch, the Moloch writing in his blog where he describes the Moloch as the demon of defection. I think it's a literate way to describe something that many ideologues, a mistake that many ideologues make. They assume that the problem is the prisoner's dilemma in the broad sense of people defect, people betray, and
I understand what you're saying.
And people assume that society is limited, and this is explicated. This is not, I'm not guessing this. Is people are explicating their beliefs that society is doomed due to the Moloch, the demon of the...
Okay, we're back with the second or third part of the podcast. We had our conversation about the different philosophies of freedom and individualism. And what else do you want to talk about, Yonatan? What's exciting in your world?
So I have a few debts from the previous conversations. Oh, let me just turn off the
voice.
Yeah,
right. Nice. Gives me feedback.
Very Canadian voice. Okay, so I wanted to complete the picture regarding the connection between the speed of DAGKnight and the World War resistance, and elaborate on or mention a certain flow, a flaw or a flow of that can utilize real-time decentralization. Okay, but first let me elaborate or concretize the coordination market thesis, how it could actually, what it actually needs from the base layer, and how it would actually look like. So Stag Hunt is essentially the claim for it's a contra to the if it's okay, it stands in contrast to the Moloch perspective or paradigm, which views defection and betrayal as the main human challenge or society challenge. And instead, Stag Hunt is a game, a less known game, but still a classic game theory, where the failure is coordination. It's not defection and trust. Meaning, so okay, I'm both in charge of the camera and in charge of uttering words. Okay, so the idea of Stag Hunt, the Stag Hunt game, in contrast to Prisoner's Dilemma, is that coordinating is still an equilibrium in game theoretic terms, right? Which means in Stag Hunt, in contrast to Prisoner's Dilemma, coordinating is still in equilibrium, which means we are still, even if we are working with self-interested individuals who are rational or pursuing their own utility and of values and goals, in a Stag Hunt matrix or game, coordinating is an equilibrium. So you don't need to give up on your interests. You don't need to be altruistic for a Stag Hunt to arrive at a coordinated outcome that everyone is happy with. However, there are also cases where we are stuck in inferior equilibria. So contrast this to prisoner's dilemma. In prisoner's dilemma, the only equilibrium is that where we are all worse off and no one's cooperating and everyone's worse off. That's the only equilibrium in a prisoner's dilemma. In any scenario in prisoner's dilemma, you're incentivized to defect. In Stag Hunt, you either work alone or you work in coordination with others. Both of these modes is an equilibrium point, and an efficient functioning society spends more time in the superior equilibria where coordination happens versus the inferior equilibria where everyone works alone. So far, is this a useful contrast between prisoner's dilemma and Stag Hunt?
Okay, yeah, that's a good description.
So I argue that we overlook the Stag Hunt, that people with enthusiasm to change everything and to radically change and override the capitalistic framework will always will tend to overclaim the flaws of a capitalistic society or free society. Whereas the Stag Hunt is a more moderate, is a softer claim. It doesn't claim that the system is broken. It just says, it claims that we are lacking coordination devices for efficient coordination devices. So how would that look like in a blockchain setup? I call this project Stag Hunt. And this is another thing I'm working on, a major thing I'm working on. You consider the following flow. You know what intents are?
Intents.
Yeah.
I know about near intents, but maybe you should define what you mean by intents.
Yeah. So near intents is an example for a ephemeral intent. It only happens in a limited context, but let's use near intents as a starting point. You sign essentially a transaction that permits someone to take your funds or and more generally use your funds or swap your funds with someone else, provided they meet a certain set of conditions or constraints on the virtual machine. So you can say something of the form, you can specify, I'm willing to spend, you can take out of my wallet one ZEC in exchange of at least 50 ETH or something like that. And then if someone can satisfy these conditions, they are permitted to enact on them. And
how is that different from a smart contract?
It's usually more friendly to cross-chain, where you can define things not as function calls, rather as constraints on the virtual machine. So it's more friendly to multiple smart contracts because you don't necessarily, in smart contract you force a certain function call. Like you direct the transfer or the modification of your funds to a specific function call. Here, you're just stating what you want to happen with your funds and under what conditions, and you're not specifying how the solver, so to speak, satisfies them. So it's a more flexible framework.
Okay.
In a smart contract, if it will be through a smart contract, it will force the counterparty that's satisfying your intent to flow specifically to function call that smart contract. And this is inefficient and there's no way to do so. So this is a more general framework that allows you to say, this is what needs to happen with my state.
We are back for possibly part 3 of this interview. You're talking about what you're working on, which is What's the name of it?
Project Stag Hunt.
Stag Hunt. Go ahead.
But
I'm gonna have to.
yeah. Take your time. The name stems from a classical game. I think by Rousseau, who was the first to, of course, he didn't phrase it in game theoretic terms, but the game, the raw game, is an ancient game where two ape men can either hunt a hare or a stag, and a large deer, and you can hunt a small hare and get a small reward, or you can coordinate together on hunting a stag, and then you get a larger reward. And the reason this game is interesting is because, you want to turn on this light for me? The reason this game is interesting is because in contrast to Prisoner's Dilemma, in this game, coordination is I think I ruined the light for you.
It's fine.
Okay. So in contrast to Prisoner's Dilemma, this is a coordinating together our actions is an equilibrium point, which means you do not need to be altruistic in order to improve society. An efficient society of players, in this case, coordinates on hunting a stag together, and there's no risk of defection when both parties decide together to hunt a stag. This is the main contrast point to the Prisoner's Dilemma talking points, or the Prisoner's Dilemma view of society, where we have to have some regulator or some super intelligence to govern us because we are unable to reach the high welfare on our own. So I view the Stag Hunt as more representative of a free society, and more optimistic at that, because it implicitly argues that the only quote-unquote problem of society in the specific context of utilitarian players or agents, national utilitarian agents, is lack of coordination, not lack of trust, or not lack of shared interests, right? This is and if you adopt the Stag Hunt mental model, then you no longer view society as an organism that needs external intervention or a regulation or regulation in order to arrive at efficient welfare or efficient state of economic society. This is the more abstract parts of Stag Hunt's thesis. The concrete realization of this is in the form of coordination markets, and we started describing this as a enhancement of intents. So the way I like to view these new primitives that I'm designing as Nintendos, which you can think of as
Nintendos.
Nintendo, and
like Nintendo.
Just like Nintendo, like an enhancement of intent.
Yeah.
And the idea behind Nintendo is it's a persistent, richer form of intent, where, and in the context of Stag Hunt, it carries logic in the form of, if many people will sign this same intent or Nintendo, consider mine as signed as well. So the way you coordinate with people is you sign a permission to move your funds or move or trade your funds in a way that is conditioned on many other people coordinating the same move with you.
Right.
And I argue that this primitive has far-reaching consequence. And we can speak either about the consequence first or about the actual cryptographic flow or consensus flow. So let me start perhaps with the latter, with the flow, with the actual concrete flow. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So again, what do you need from the base layer in order to support this this coordination? So first and foremost, maybe let's take maybe a concrete example of a use case. Okay, so consider you want to move your liquidity from a certain liquidity pool to another one.
Yeah.
But you will only do so if many other users and liquidity providers, but also users, will sign this transition with you. You don't want to move alone. Moving alone doesn't make sense. Then you will sign a Nintendo, and the Nintendo will say, I am moving my liquidity if at least 1,000 users or X amount of capital moves with me or signs the same Nintendo. And you can decide freely what's the threshold that you are willing, that you're comfortable with. You can say at least 3 people and $100, or at least $3 million or $30 million. You can decide your own threshold for how much coordination you are requiring in order to hunt this stag, so to speak, together, or act in a coordinated manner.
Okay.
You sign this and you send it to the operators of the stag hunt layer. And importantly, in many use cases, you will want these operators to not know anything about the state of this proposal. So I call it a pack, the pack formation. You want it in many cases, you want it to be opaque, so that the operators, you can think of the operators, for instance, as the Kaspa miners. They won't know what the state of the pack is. So you need to use some form of threshold homomorphic encryption for that. There are other use cases where you don't mind so much, but in many use cases, this is very sensitive. The reason this is sensitive is you don't want the operators to have the advantage where they can either front run or back run the coordination initiative. Okay?
Yeah.
You send it to that layer, and that layer computes the state of the pack, and the state of the pack can either be no one is shifting to the other pool, no one is jumping to the other pool, or it can be or it can identify a large subset of Nintendos or people whose conditions were met, and then you want the coordination to snap immediately. So consider the liquidity pool example. You want, if many people or lots of capital has all crossed the threshold that they defined, that they chose for sufficient coordination, then you want it to snap immediately, and you don't want to wait. Again, for 2 reasons. One reason is just it opens a surface attack for the operators. If you have this lag between when it is discovered and when it is executed, that's reason number 1. And reason number two is this system should allow users, even if they signed a Nintendo, should allow them to move their capital freely. So the fact that you signed a Nintendo saying I'm moving 1 million Bitcoin from this pool to that pool, or 1 million USD, whatever that system, whatever stablecoin that system uses, from this pool to that pool, doesn't mean that you lock the capital. You can freely move your capital, and the operators just need to continuously evaluate the largest subset whose conditions were met. Okay?
Yeah.
This is a concrete DeFi example. What I was alluding to is that this has also more societal, ideological, can have political consequence, because in many cases, you can argue that there's a lack of coordination in the sense that many people would be happy with many people's preferences and views are not getting represented because they're just scattered and not aggregated correctly.
Right.
So take, for example, I think one example I mentioned, I'm not sure if I mentioned it in the 6-pager or the Oxford address, was take, for example, a case where many people are upset with a certain policy of a stream service, let's say the Netflix.
Okay, and that happens all the time, right?
Yes. Now, there is some level of competition. You can arguably find other content in other places, but less so for families and small children. So, canceling your subscription by yourself, you feel good with yourself, but you won't really find an alternative. And this happens a lot, that it could be that the silent majority or the scattered majority has no voice and is not able to move together. So it could be the case, I don't know that for sure, but it could be the case that many people are wanting to move away. It could be the case that many users want to shift away from that service, but they're not doing it for the mere technical fact that they're discoordinated. Okay, they're scattered. There's no discovery layer for the shared preference and the shared interests. Okay, so it's not the fact that they don't trust each other, or that that there's bad intentions. It's more that people are scattered, their preferences are not aggregated in an efficient manner, and there's no device for moving together from here to there. And so how will this look with coordination market? You would sign a Nintendo, and the Nintendo will say, if a new service is spun with, commitment to these and these values, or Vlad tweets that this service is amazing, or some other set of thresholds or conditions, if this service is, if a new streaming service is spun, and here are the conditions that, and it meets these and these criteria, then immediately and atomically, I join if at least 10,000 people join, or at least 1 million people join, or maybe it secures funding of at least $100 million. So it has a chance, right? I can condition these things. And then I have no restrictions on my funds. I can empty my wallet. I can add more money to my wallet. I can retract that Nintendo. There's no limitation on there's no limitation for me on this primitive. it's actionable, but it's not committed. That's the distinction we should have in mind.
Yeah.
The operators of the stagnant layer, once they prove that they have and that my conditions were met, can snap it, and they should snap it, but there's no commitment. I can increase my thresholds, decrease them, change them, retreat, whatever I want.
I actually have a smart idea. Can you open this? There's a flashlight inside, and we can use that for putting it in the background for lighting the camera better.
Spooky. Does it have battery?
It has the button at the bottom.
Wow, that's very spooky. Okay. Is it good?
It's good. I mean, it's much better than before.
Yeah.
Unless it's bothers your eyes.
Smart indeed. No, it's exactly the dark atmosphere we needed.
Yeah, it feels like a summer camp with a fire in the middle, and we're telling stories about
The future.
hunting stags. I was gonna ask you, what are the stags that you think we need to hunt in crypto? Because obviously there's this libertarian cypherpunk ideology which is at the core. But do you think it's BlackRock? Do you think maybe it's some nation states? Who's the stag that we need to coordinate to hunt?
So hunt in this context would be capture and utilize, not take down.
Yeah.
In this specific context.
So would you say you're more of a minarchist than an anarchist?
What's that?
Minarchist means you want a minimal state. So you don't want to destroy the state, you just want to shrink it.
What would be the difference between a minarchist and a libertarian?
Well, libertarian is more of an umbrella term. It means you just like freedom. It's usually associated with the American movement in libertarians. It's also associated with left-wing French anarchism. And it carries a lot of weight.
In America, it could carry
classical liberals are libertarians by some definitions. But in the case of minarchists, it's more of a clear term which says, well, this is about minimizing the extent of the state, making it smaller.
Sure, but I'm not sure I understand what's the difference between a minarchist and a classic liberal. Or it's just that the terms have got mudded and we need a new term to describe the same things.
I mean, it's the same as agorist and anarchist. I mean, you have a lot of overlap.
Mm-hmm.
But my point is about the stags that we need to hunt. And you said that in this context. Hunt means take over, not destroy.
Stag is a metaphorical term describing here a shared utility that we are unable to grab if we're discoordinated. It's a metaphorical category that describes anything that we would want to do together. For instance, in the liquidity pool, I would say the stag is simply the superior liquidity pool. Like in crypto, so in crypto there are lots of capital locked in dead pools or stale areas where people dead chains where people. I wouldn't say that is not the right way. It's not the right description.
Inactive, let's call it that.
Yeah, but I don't mean that capital exists in active pools. I mean, it exists in shitty technology, for the lack of a better description, where people, or clunky technology, where people are not moving out of there because the user are also stuck in the same clunky technology. And for instance, take the entire Ethereum with the L2, with the entire mess over there. That would be moving away to a superior and more cohesive ecosystem would be a stack in this terminology that I'm adopting or proposing. And in that sense, if we can utilize Stag Hunt for coordinating migration to superior tech, that would be a big win. Although I wouldn't limit my focus in Stag Hunt or in general project Stag Hunt to a crypto night. It's more about I wouldn't limit it to crypto, to the crypto field. It's more about general use cases that can be brought about. Similarly, it's similar to prediction market, I would say, in the sense, not in any sense other than it not being necessarily associated with crypto. It could be understood by normies as just tech that doesn't necessarily associate with crypto. So in that sense, I would view it as a more general endeavor. Now, in the case of the interesting and cool part is that these Nintendos and Stags can compose. So you can imagine something like someone says, okay, if there are 10 million people that want to purchase a subscription to a wokeless streaming service, then I want to purchase as well. And then another person says, if there are at least 10 million people or 5 million people that want to do so, I'm investing, I'm seeding, or I want to join as a seeding pool investment of that service. And then a third person can provide other conditions. So you can sort of compose these coordination initiatives in a way that isn't available in traditional infrastructure. So I view it as something that can, first and foremost, be exciting and very expressive and cool to play with. And I'm sure many people will find good and exciting ways to utilize it and propose very creative flows. One set of use cases is, I would say, a category of use cases when you think about Stag Hunt is exiting network effects or hopping between networks. The main one main characterization of cases where we as a society, we can say there's we agree that we are all suffering from similar pathologies is when we are stuck in network effects. We can't hop to better technology, to better consensus systems, to better social organizations, because there is consensus around a certain focal point that everyone agrees is inferior, but moving alone doesn't make sense. So that's one broad category where Stag Hunt will shine.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I have another question about Stag Hunts. I definitely want to read more about it if you have something to send me. But I also observed over time that there is this weird overlap between Ethereum and Kaspa, where the Ethereum white paper mentions your block DAG design. And also, for a while, the scaling solution for Ethereum was called Casper.
Yeah, that was
and you also deal with GHOSTDAGs and stuff. So there must be something there, like Ghost and Casper, Kaspa.
It's just that so there's no alignment there. It's just that when you had if you have come up with cool or just new ways to do consensus or to do other primitives, you didn't really have the attention of the Bitcoin community. And Vitalik and at the time Vlad were more receptive to these ideas. So the Ghost protocol ended up in Ethereum white paper because Vitalik was more open to consider other consensus systems. at the time when, Casper, I think Vlad coined it, if I'm not mistaken.
Vlad's Zamfir. Yeah, she hasn't been very active lately, but she was on my podcast like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, so I think Ghost gave inspiration to Vitalik and I think also Vlad at the time, but they used then the Ghost MD, I think was the name of the staking version of it. Ghost didn't end up being implemented in Ethereum, and they ended up implementing a version of Inclusive, which is I guess our first formalization of the DAG framework. I mean, with time, these ideas have their own inertia. So it's not that because we came up with the first DAG formalization or messaging that this means that everyone is copycatting in some sense. Not at all. People have their own creativity around these ideas. I would also say that I refuse to see DAG as the main contribution. I don't like DAGs. At least I don't like their I don't like the impression that a DAG is an invention or some novel idea. DAG is just a data structure. You can use DAG in a very stupid and void manner or vacuous manner. And you can use DAG in a sophisticated manner. I prefer thinking about I'll give you the properties of the consensus system we're building. And then if you ask me how this is done, I'll mention DAG. But really, when I describe DAGKnight, for the irony, DAG is there. But if I describe a DAGKnight, I wouldn't describe it as a DAG protocol, although it is. I would describe it as I described it to you, as the first partially synchronous or parameterless 49% Byzantine protocol. That's how I would describe it. It happens to use DAG because DAG is the most general framework. Is this a good time to describe why DAGKnight is word war resistant?
Sure. I mean, it's a bit late into the interview, but it's night outside, and we do like DAGs, so...
Yeah. You can broadcast it in the morning if it's better.
No, I will probably broadcast it maybe around noon for Eastern time in the US so that my American viewers can watch this live.
Okay, at their peril. So in short, in very concise terms, the fact that you have a very fast consensus that is not limited by any hard-coded latency parameter already implies that you are resistant to network hiccups or network catastrophes. So these properties are dual, and in fact you can't implement one without the other. So let me repeat that. Any consensus system that has the property that it can confirm transactions as fast as the underlying network permits, and there's an asterisk behind permits, but it's not. It's just an advanced asterisk that I will mention only later. Any consensus network that is as fast as the underlying network, is necessarily resilient to that network breaking apart. And counterintuitive as it may sound, it's because if the consensus protocol does not know what the network latency is, then necessarily it's either as fast as the network is or as slow as the network is, which means that if the network breaks apart, the protocol does not know that the network necessarily, that something bad necessarily happened. It will just aggregate in an oblivious manner and will just confirm blocks, confirm transactions much slower. Does that make sense?
It does.
So this property is called responsiveness or partial synchrony. Michael and I, Michael Sutton, the He's basically the informal CTO of Kaspa.
I haven't met him yet, but
so you should bring him on the podcast. He also, together with Ori, created a new programming language for covenants that's called Argent on top of the Silverscript compiler. You should definitely invite it to speak about this programming language. I won't belabor on that because it's not mine to celebrate, but it's definitely an achievement that will interest anyone that's programming, I think, in the new era, because it's just something that's very natural to work with. Definitely, if you know what covenants are and you understand their value. So Michael and I, so we spoke about DAGKnight. So DAGKnight is a work with Michael, and when Michael came up with DAGKnight a few years ago, like 5 or 6 years ago, with the kernel of this was big excitement for us, but it took years to really build it into a secure protocol. The problem we have with selling this idea is because distributed systems folks, they are convinced that there's an impossibility theorem stating that no protocol can be responsive and at the same time be resilient to 34% Byzantine attacker. So there's a famous impossibility theorem in a consensus protocols that supposedly prohibits a consensus protocol from satisfying these properties that we mentioned, together with being 49% Byzantine resilient. We describe in the paper how we kind of bypassed this impossibility theorem, but the bottom line is that if you want to remove any trust from the network layer, or to minimize your assumptions on the network layer, then DAGKnight is the pinnacle of what you can achieve, and it's theoretically optimal.
Okay. I do want to ask you, do you ever feel like you're too ahead of your time? Because obviously there are not too many people who understand this or who care about this. We still have designers who are trying to find ways to make the Bitcoin Satoshi design scale and add features. And you're coming up with something which you call a generalization of the Nakamoto consensus. And maybe it flies over many people's heads because it's just so different. It's not even using a blockchains, which an entire industry has been used to. It tries to be so different in lots of ways and finds new workarounds for solving problems. Like, do you feel you're ahead of your time by a few years? You think in a few years you'll be just like Zcash and you will finally get your flowers?
I'm counting on you for that.
That's why I'm here, I guess, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's the difference between ahead of my time and a poor communicator, but definitely these ideas are, actually with respect to DAOs, these ideas did not in the form of DAG, but the idea that the focus on BPS versus TPS,
which is blocks per second as opposed to transactions per second.
Yes, that focus, that shift of mind happened, I think, already 2 years ago, when or 1 year ago maybe, when all the projects started, and I think Solana pushed this idea or this trait more, and then there was the base on optimism that also started with 100 millisecond blocks and all that. I think Kaspa is a bit isolated in the reach, in the sense that people are just tweaking their their classical BFT parameters. Okay, let's move it from 2 seconds to 200 milliseconds, and then their marketing department just celebrates it. And Kaspa, I think, had difficulty with penetrating the more serious, the more hardcore circles. And so I guess there's the in some senses we had the challenge of falling between the cracks, because the hardcore community is very focused on improving incremental stuff on Bitcoin and other networks, and the non-hardcore crypto is just increasing the performance of their blockchain for whatever trade-offs and celebrating them without any giving without any accountability on the trade-offs it creates. I hope that with Zcash rise, as I said, it's like a revival of the innovative Bitcoin. So recently, Bitcoin core devs are starting to have started speaking about speeding up Zcash, right? And shortening the block times. And they're definitely aware of that. So maybe they didn't reach yet the timescales that require DAG, but definitely the time of Kaspa will come. I'm sure because of two things. I don't think anything interesting will come from the Bitcoin community in terms of technology, at least, and I don't think you can achieve the properties of Kaspa without the protocols that Kaspa is operating with. Add to this the frenzy of AI that will require everything to be very fast. People are using things with very low levels of patience, which is good. We hate patient people. I think this recipe is a good optimistic case, but definitely we need, I think, more voices and a better penetration of crypto circles, I guess.
I agree with that. What do you think is going to be the next big narrative? Because every cycle we have something that really gets the normies involved. Or at least what do you hope it's going to be this time around? Because it seems like we sort of ran dry in terms of use cases for the blockchain or whatever is going to become popular in mainstream media. It was tokens for a while. It was DAOs. It was DeFi. What do you think is next? Is it prediction markets? Is it something more interesting? Is it Nintendos?
Coordination markets.
Yeah,
coordination markets.
So that's what you're working on, and that's what you hope that is really going to catch on.
Yeah, I'm not sure trend is a good word in this sense. But I think coordination markets is definitely has the right grammar and the right intentions.
Also, for the purpose of documenting this trip, we left from Brașov in Romania, which is a city very beautiful in the mountains. And now we're in the capital, Bucharest. So it's been a very long drive with stops, and when our cameras ran out of batteries and we ended up using Yonatan's laptop as backup because we just had more stuff to talk about. We couldn't just have a 1-hour interview like most people. That's not the kind of people that we are. What do you want to say in closing, Yonatan? We're almost close to our destination. Yes, in like 15 minutes.
I would want to interview you.
Really? What do you want to know, sir?
What would it take for one question I have? What would it take for you to become an XYZ maxi? You spoke about narratives and trends. What is
XYZ?
General? It could be Stag Hunt. It could be Kaspa. It could be a third thing. What are your criteria when you are like are you what needs to happen for you to say, no, I'm committing my work or my interest or part of my interest, large part of my interest?
I do like stuff that stops Big Brother, so that's why I'm interested in Zcash. It's the fork of Bitcoin that has the best privacy that this design can possibly have. It has the kind of cryptography that was considered to be mostly theoretical before they actually made it happen. And that's also something that the Monero fans don't understand, that they didn't, at least not before the full chain membership proofs, which are not even live yet, they didn't write their own cryptography in Monero. But in Zcash, they started from scratch. From just an idea, they had to come up with something. So I do respect this, and it's kind of the Bitcoin that I wish we had, but we did not for various reasons. Some of them understandable, like the inflation bugs. Maybe we didn't want to have that in Bitcoin, and we wanted to test this tech before. But my point being is that my background is that I studied political science. I was very much interested in human liberty, and I remember having my mind blown when I was reading John Stuart Mill, even if I find him silly nowadays with the utilitarianism. And I think it's kind of a naive concept. I still can relate to that feeling of thinking how you can maximize your freedom, of course with some responsibility, but still. Like, that's why I got into Bitcoin. I was also an advocate for internet freedom in Romania. When I turned 20 years old, I went to my first protest, and it was against a law that was international. It was called ACTA, ACTA. I started an online petition that was like the peak of collectivism, which got 100,000 signatures in a week, and that was like a star in a newspaper for a while. And I kept pursuing this. If you look at my academic background, you will see that I did my bachelor thesis about online elections, and then I got interested in internet privacy and freedom. And that's also the lens through which I discovered Bitcoin. And whenever I discover something that adds more privacy, gives people more freedom, I sort of like it. The tipping point usually, I think for everyone, is when it feels kind of obvious that it's happening. And it's like, I think Paul Stortz, the guy who's launching Zcash, presented this metaphor. It's like when you're inviting people to a party, and the first people are usually not the coolest kids. They're just your close friends. And they are coming because they like you. And they know that they trust your competence to do a good party. But you also want girls to your party, you know? You want drinks, you want funny people. You want guys who are able to...
The Big Brother is chasing you.
Yeah, for being chased right now by the police. No, I don't think so. So... obviously, I'm not one of the cool kids. I'm obviously not, but I'm also somewhat ahead of my time, like by a few years. I discovered this recently. Like, I got into privacy before it was cool. I was telling people to buy Zcash when it was still $30. And I sort of saw this narrative shift coming that people are gonna ask for more privacy in their protocols. And now I also sort of foresaw what was going to happen with the cold card hack, which is really shitty. I think it puts the entire security industry to shame, and also the whole Bitcoin only movement, because for the sake of following the dogma, they're willing to look the other way in so many regards. Oh, I used to go to university around here. It was just one of the buildings that was annexed to the University of Bucharest. Kind of crazy. Used to be the guy who takes the tram. Now I drive in a Lexus. Life gets good, man.
The part of Zcash.
No, it's not Zcash. I mean, if Zcash hits like $10,000, I'm going to get a much nicer car. But until then, I'm happy with this. My point being, so your question was, what does it take for someone to be a maximalist of XYZ? It's always the club, I guess. You got to like someone who's into that and then pursue it. And that's why you're on my podcast, because I do believe that you're one of the underrated innovators in this space. And I like this. And I know that in a few years, people look at this and you're like, oh, look at this guy. He was interviewing this person who's super famous now.
Wait, am I one of the cool or the girls or the weird ones in the beginning?
You're the close friend or the researcher. You're the academic. Okay. You're not quite the party person, or at least that's not.
No, you are the party. You are the party person.
I'm the party person.
Yeah,
I'm the one who brings people. But yeah, I think what Kaspa needs, if it's more specific about Kaspa, is more wallet support. Exchanges, honestly, I've come to the conclusion that, of course, they're nice for the liquidity and they give you some degree of legitimacy because they acknowledge that, okay, it's good enough for them to list it, but they're shitty also, and they're going to delist you if you don't have a certain amount of volume. And sometimes they also suppress the price, like you saw in the case of Monero, where the fact that it was listed on Binance it turns out it was detrimental to price discovery. They were shorting it like crazy to keep the price down. Of course, you do want to have multiple sources of truth. You don't want to have just a couple of places where the price is this, because that's what gives the price more legitimacy. It's not just one place where it's trading for this amount, because obviously you can do a lot of wash trading and manipulate markets if you don't have much liquidity. But I think these wallets nowadays have really turned into exchanges in and of I can't talk anymore. In and of themselves. So you can see how, for example, Cake Wallet, Edge Wallet, they'll have a swap feature. And some people will just never use it, look at it like, it's just something near intense. It's also super big, possibly super integrated, yeah. One of the most interesting things in crypto altogether, because nowadays it doesn't matter anymore what you own. You can turn that into anything for payment. And that's something that I really wanted to see. It's like Uniswap on steroids. Uniswap started on Ethereum. It just swapped between tokens on a smart contract. Oh, it's green light.
Do you imagine a world where or a reality, that's the bad word, a reality where the cypherpunk movement is broadening its values from the protective to the active? And by that I mean, we are used, and when someone listens to you and to your podcast, we are used to identify cypherpunk with, as you said, fighting the big brother, fending off institutions choking on the network or on the social and economic ecosystem. It's a protective set of values.
No, it's also negative. Like it starts from the state action and it derives its legitimacy from violence and oppression, and says, let's invent the tools that make this not possible. It's not about destroying the state. It's just making it less potent in terms of crazy bus driver.
So in that sense, there's an a priori limit to how much the movement can affect normies' lives.
Yeah, I agree with that.
and that's the context in which I'm like, okay, so let's assume we achieved all the dreams of cypherpunks. How deep into reality will this be integrated? So in Ethereum, you have the
someone's waving here.
I don't think.
Let me see if I have any cash for him to go away. At least they used to watch your windshield or something. Just give him this.
Well, you are the giver.
Hey, look.
I won't take a commission on your charity.
Thanks, boss. You see that they speak English. He's a street beggar, but
He's a professional. Yeah, he's a professional beggar. There's a limit to how much the cypherpunk movement can integrate into the flows and lives of ordinary people if the values are exhausted by protective and negating state power or centralized choke points. I'm not saying, of course I'm not alluding to this is not important, but this has a limit, and we may have reached this limit. It's not that the job has ended and completed and there's no further tasks, but I'm not sure there are further goals. You can say this goal and this goal hasn't.
Bit defeating. And I also look at myself sometimes. I feel, I look at myself in the mirror. I'm older. I don't have the energy to fight as much. I haven't gone to a street protest in, 8 years or something. But my point is that it's very legit to ask yourself, what have we really accomplished here? Because a bunch of guys got really rich in the space and they live a good life and they seem content. Like, they're not willing to fight as before. And I ask myself, am I willing to fight as before? Sometimes, yes. I look at guys like Amir Taki, for example. I think he is still uncompromising in some ways, but in other ways, he sort of, he made a deal with the Swiss government so he can stay there and whatever to build DarkFi. I don't blame him. He does need some sort of protection or safe environments to be able to do what he wants. Just a second, I need to take a left here.
Paradoxically, I would say that Amir is more on the, despite the a DarkFi can signal Amir's values and his statements are more aligned with also a positive.
So many too.
I can hear it.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, we're good.
So, n-ai cum să vedea tăi de disi. N-ai cum, da. Bine. Înainte n-ai ce bă.
I'm getting a bit sloppy here.
Oh, you're good.
Okay. So, what was I saying? Oh, we're gonna see the Palace of Parliament. We can actually park there and take a nice picture. As you agree?
Yeah, let's.
It's one of the nicest places at night in the city. But yeah, I do question a lot what we accomplished, because in some ways maybe I agree with you that there wasn't much more that we could do, or there isn't at this point. But I also feel like we haven't really tried as much as we could. Maybe we didn't give this our best.
My point was not necessarily deflating. I was more giving context on why either coordination market or something of that form, of that of the same that rings similarly and of the same tone should be promoted by cypherpunks. And by that I mean any positive vision for how crypto can enable positive solutions or positive organization of society, not only or of people, not only in the way of, okay, you are protecting against the big brother, but also some positive solution is not the right word. Positive vision for how people operate. It could be coordination markets through Project Stag Hunt. It could be someone else coming up with a better or more accurate vision. But it needs to be, I feel it needs to be of the same ring rather than, I think we covered the protective goals. We didn't necessarily achieve them all. We can, improve that with Tachyon. You can improve that with more wallet integration. But broadly, I think we covered, at least in principle, the cypherpunk protective ideals and goals, and we broaden it to something that's also positive, not only negative.
I can relate to this, and I'm happy that we haven't entirely given up. You know what I mean? Like we could just say, let's settle for this institutional grade asset, which is BTC, and maybe that this is what it's meant to be, and no much more than this. But I'm super happy that we're still fighting, we're still building, and there are new ideas that come along and they try to change the industry from the foundations, not just refine on making blocks a bit larger or, a bit faster. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from. We just arrived at the Palace of Parliament. Can you film this? Is it a pocket ride? You bought this? Yeah, it's crazy. It's been a long, long, long drive. You need to stabilize it a bit, but yeah, this is the second biggest administrative building in the world after the Pentagon, which is really crazy. We had a crazy dictator in our country who starved our nation just to build this, and 80% of it is not being used. They actually rent it for weddings. And not too many people do their weddings here because it's expensive, but that's besides the point. Yeah.
So this is your big brother?
It's not my big brother, no. It's like my distant uncle that I don't like very old one, the one who smells. The one who comes to you and always gives you bad gifts, and you're like, how the hell do you always mess up?
Thanks for the ride.
The one who doesn't remember your birthday.
Do you want to go out and celebrate your destination? Okay.
We can use our phones for recording that.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I think we recorded enough in here. 58 minutes. It's crazy, man. We were like, oh, let's do 15, 20 minutes and that's it. And then we drain the batteries.
Thanks for the ride and for the opportunity again to see you.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
You got to take a picture here, post it on Twitter, but maybe post it after you leave. That's good for OPSEC.
Yeah,
Definitely post it tomorrow after your flight.
Definitely. Please do.
Thank you very much, Yonatan. This was not recorded, so just move a bit. So yeah, this handshake right here, like secret societies, secret handshake.